Hey guys, let's get into our discussion about Cyrano and see what happened in these pages. You were to have read pages 470 to 477. So we're going to pick up on page 470. Remember when we had left off? We're on the battlefield. All of the cadets and the soldiers are all feeling down and homesick and they're hungry. They're starving. Um, and so Cyrano was trying to liven them up, right? Trying to cheer them up, put them in a good mood. And right when we left, De Guiche had just arrived, right? Remember, the guys don't like him. The soldiers don't like De Guiche, but he had just arrived, and Cyrano was like, "Hey, we don't want to see him to see us looking miserable. We don't want to give him that satisfaction. So everybody like get up and look like you're happy." So they all like sit up and they start playing games and stuff like that, so that they look like they're doing just fine, right? So he comes in and he can tell by the way the cadets are looking, the way they look at him, that they don't like him, right? And he even says, "What have we here? Black looks? Yes, gentlemen, I am informed I am not popular." So he's like, "I get it. You're all looking at me that way. I know that you don't think I'm or that you don't like me, and that's fine." He said, "That's fine. I don't really care." And he's like, "I can afford having you hate me because I'm in charge." And then he tells this story about this battle that he was just in, this group of men that he led in this charge. And he's telling the story, and Cyrano interrupts him. He's like, "Yeah, but what about your white scarf?" Because De Guiche had a white scarf that he wore, and that was like a part of his uniform that signified that he was an officer, right? So officers would wear these white scarves. And so he said, "Oh, so you heard about that, did you?" He said, "Well, yes. I was rallying my men for the third time, and I found that I was carried into the enemy lines, and so I was in danger of getting shot or captured because of where we were. So I took off my scarf and I flung it away because he knew that if the enemy saw that he had on that white scarf, if they knew that he was an officer, he would be more likely to be captured, right?" So he said, "I took off my scarf and I flung it away so that nobody would know my military rank. And so I escaped. And I rallied my men and we returned and we won the day." And so he just thinks he's something, right? Because he was able to win this battle. And the cadets are just kind of sitting around, like they act like they're not even listening to what he's saying. And he's like, "Well, what do you guys say to that? Hey, that was pretty smart and pretty smart move on my part, right?" And the cadets are still just kind of there thinking. And Cyrano's like, "Well, um, Henry of Navarre, who was a king of France, he was outnumbered and he never threw away, his white feather. He never got rid of what was signified him." And Guiche was like, "Well, but what I did, it was a success. It worked." And Cyrano was like, "Well, possibly, but an officer shouldn't take lightly resigning his position like that." And Cyrano was like, "If I would have been there, I would have been brave. And if you would have thrown your scarf off, I would have picked it up and put it on." Like Cyrano saying, "I'm so brave. I wouldn't care if it made me a target. I'd be proud." Right. And so he's like, "Hey, I'll tell you what. You think I'm just bragging?" Because Takesha's like, "Oh, you're just bragging." He's like, "You think I'm just bragging? Give me your scarf. I will wear it tonight as we go into battle." And he's like, "Oh, well, I can't give you my scarf because it was it's in the riverbank and it was a spot that where the artillery was, and it's impossible to get to my scarf and return alive. That's just not possible." So then Cyrano reaches into his coat and pulls out the white scarf. He had already found it and gotten it because remember, every night he goes behind, or every morning he goes behind enemy lines to deliver the letter to Roxanne. So he already has the scarf and he pulls out and he's like, "Ah, yeah, here it is." So then the cadets are like stifling a laugh. They're trying not to, laugh out loud because he just made Guiche look like a fool, right? And so De Guiche is so angry that he's made to look like a fool, that he takes the scarf from Cyrano and he's like, "Well, I was debating what I was going to do, but now I know for sure what I'm going to do." So he climbs up on the barricade there and he waves the white scarf. There's a spy for the other side down there, a Spaniard down there, and De Guiche waves the white scarf, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, there's a spy down there, and I just gave him the signal, and so now that he knows what he needs to do." And Cyrano's like, "You are such a traitor. Takeisha's like, yes, maybe, but I'm very useful. So he's like, you know what? This is what's going on. There is an army. The other army. The Spaniards are waiting to attack. They just need to know where to attack. And so, by my waving that white scarf up there, I'd already made an agreement with them that when they saw that, they would know this is the spot that they are to attack. They are to attack here. And so, of course, the cadets and the captain, and, they're not too happy about this. And the captain's like, well, then you're using us to gain time? And Dagisha's like, yes, you are going to stall. The army's going to come and fight you while the rest of our army, right, it gives them more time. So you will kindly, if you will, he says, you will all be so kind as to lay down your lives. So basically, Dagisha's saying, I'm sacrificing all of you to gain some time for the other part of the army. And so Cyrano's like, I get it. So this is your revenge that you're just going to give us all up to die. And Takesha's like, look, I don't pretend to love you guys. I never, basically, I never said I liked you. So yeah, but since you guys think you're so invincible and the bravest of the brave, and you think you're all great, hey, go ahead, show us how brave you are. And Dagish says to Cyrano, he says, you like to fight 100 against one, so here you go. Here's your opportunity. Go for it. Okay, so Cyrano, of course, is like, don't worry about it, cadets, right? We're going to be brave. We're going to fight bravely. And then he goes to Christian, who is just like sitting there with his arms folded, just like not reacting. And so he's like, Christian, and he says, Roxanne. He's just thinking about Roxanne, and I'm going to die here and never see, Roxanne again. And he's like, I just wish I could give her like a farewell, tell her everything that was on my heart. Cyrano's like, yes, I have a letter right here for you. I've already written the farewell letter for you. Christian's like, oh, show it to me. So it's like, Cyrano's like, what, you mean you want to read it before I send it? And Christian's like, well, yeah, of course. So he takes the letter and opens it. He's like, what? And Cyrano's like, what is it? And Christian's like, look, this little circle on the paper. And Cyrano's like, a circle? Christian's like, yeah, this is a tear. And so Christian's trying to figure out, Cyrano was crying when he wrote this letter and he shed a tear. And so the mark on there is like a tear stain from a tear that dropped onto the paper. And Cyrano was like, oh, yeah, well, sometimes, poets, when they're writing, they just use their imagination and they really get into it. And so I just made this letter so pathetic that I was weeping as I wrote it. And Christian's like, wait a minute. You were crying? He's like, well, yeah, because it's not a little thing to die. Or he said it is a little thing. Like dying isn't the worst part of it, but not to see her again, that is terrible. And Cyrano kind of starts thinking about that, and he's like, and I shall never. And then Christian looks at him like, wait a minute. And then he's like, I mean, we shall never. And Christian's still looking at him. He's like, I mean, you will never. And Christian snatches the letter. Was like, give me that. So Christian's like, something is going on here. Why is Cyrano acting so weird? Why did he cry? Why was he saying those things? So Christian snatches the letter, but then all of a sudden, the sentry says, halt, who goes there? And the captain's like, what is it? And the sentry's like, there's a coach. Someone's coming. And so all the soldiers are like, wow, what's going on? Who's coming? Who's coming to the camp? What's this coach coming? Blah, 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 blah. And so this coach is coming, and it gets there, and it stops. And they open the door, put down the steps, and it's Roxanne. Roxanne steps down out of the coach, and she says, good morning. And that's where that scene ends. All right, so for tomorrow, you're going to pick up there on page 478, read to page 485, and see what happens. Why does Roxanne come to the camp? Who else does she bring with her? What happens while they are at the camp? And we will be having a quiz, planning to finish this act by Thursday, and having a quiz over this by Thursday. Also on Thursday, I'm planning to have a live meeting with our class, like a Google Meets at 11:30, and I'll send you more information about that. But we'll plan to do that on Thursday. It would probably be beneficial for you to wait to take your quiz until after that meeting on Thursday. But for now, that's all we're doing today, and I will see you tomorrow.